Welcome to The Innovative Teacher. In this series, we're diving into virtual reality in education. For many teachers, the idea of VR in schools can sound like a gimmick, or just another piece of flashy technology that may not have lasting value. But the first time you put on a headset, something usually clicks. Suddenly, you realize that VR isn't just something to look at. It's something you enter, something that surrounds you and invites you to interact. And that shift is what makes VR so powerful for learning. Instead of looking at a flat screen, you are inside an environment. You can look around in all directions, move naturally, and interact with objects as if they were real. This creates a sense of presence, the feeling that you are somewhere else entirely while still fully focused and aware. That sense of presence is what sets VR apart from other digital tools, and it's also what gives it such strong potential in education. When you first encounter VR, it can feel a little confusing. It doesn't fit neatly into the categories most of us are used to. It's not just a device or software or even a video. It's a learning environment, an experience you step into, and the learning happens inside that environment, not just in front of you. Attention is guided by space rather than by a screen. Interaction replaces observation. And often, the experience comes before the explanation, which is a shift from traditional classroom approaches. For teachers used to leading lessons from the front of the room, this can raise questions about control, structure, and design. And those questions are valid. Noticing them is the first step to using VR thoughtfully. In VR, students are active participants rather than passive viewers. They're not just watching or reading about a concept, they're inside it. They can explore environments, manipulate objects, test ideas, and see the consequences of their actions immediately. This supports learning in ways that are difficult to achieve in traditional classrooms. Students are learning by doing rather than by watching. They're building spatial reasoning, experimenting safely, and reflecting on outcomes as they happen. Research consistently shows that active, experiential learning leads to deeper understanding, and VR makes that possible in a way that is immersive, engaging, and memorable. At its core, virtual reality is technology that places learners inside a digital environment that responds to their movements and actions in real time. Using a headset and sometimes hand controllers or hand tracking, the learner's view of the physical world is replaced by a digital one. As they move their head, hands, or body, the environment responds immediately. That responsiveness is what creates the sense of presence that makes VR so effective for learning. One of the easiest ways to think about it is this. VR is not something students look at, it is something they enter. You don't need to understand the technical workings to use VR effectively. What matters is how the experience supports learning. VR presents depth and scale naturally, which allows students to understand size, distance, and relationships intuitively. This is especially useful in subjects like science, mathematics, geography, and design, where spatial understanding is key. Students interact using controllers or hand tracking, which means they're performing actions rather than just observing. And the environment responds instantly to their choices, which encourages trial, error, and reflection. Multisensory engagement, movement, audio, and interaction helps reinforce focus and memory, which is particularly helpful for learners who struggle with text-heavy approaches. Many modern VR headsets also include pass-through technology. This allows students to see the real classroom through the headset's cameras, sometimes with digital content layered over the physical space. For schools, this reduces anxiety for first-time users, improves safety, supports classroom management, and enables blended learning that combines physical and digital experiences. This feature makes VR much more practical and scalable for everyday classroom use. It's easy to see why VR is often misunderstood. Because it's associated with gaming, and because the learning that happens inside a headset isn't visible to observers, it can be dismissed as a novelty. Without careful design, VR can indeed become entertainment. But when guided thoughtfully, it becomes a powerful learning environment. It can support sustained attention, active problem-solving, differentiation and self-paced learning, and safe practice in complex or high-risk scenarios. VR does not replace good teaching. It extends it by making abstract, distant, or inaccessible concepts experiential. As a teacher, your role in VR is similar to your role in other innovative learning environments. You are not there to master the headset or to be a technical expert. Your expertise is in guiding learning. You help students reflect, ask questions, and connect their experiences to bigger ideas. Strong questioning and scaffolding strategies are more important than technical mastery. In fact, students exploring VR may outpace you in navigating the environment, and that's a good thing. It frees you to observe, coach, and support learning rather than compete with it. When VR is implemented thoughtfully, it helps students develop skills that extend beyond the virtual world. They develop collaboration, critical thinking, decision-making, spatial reasoning, planning, and resilience. At first, these skills can be easy to miss. You may notice movement and gestures before you notice the underlying cognitive processes. But with practice, your observation lens sharpens. You start seeing the thinking behind the movement, the problem-solving behind the decisions, and the reflection behind each choice. What looks simple on the surface is actually cognitively complex underneath. Concerns about screen time, well-being, and safety are valid. VR is immersive and engaging, and if not structured intentionally, it can be overwhelming. Strong programs include breaks, posture awareness, time limits, and guidance on self-regulation. Interestingly, teachers often report that structured VR experiences promote healthier digital habits because students learn to engage responsibly, take breaks, and manage their attention. Language also matters. If you describe what students are doing as playing VR games, it may sound casual or recreational. If you describe it as participating in structured VR learning experiences, it signals intentionality, purpose, and educational value. How you talk about VR influences how parents, colleagues, and school leaders respond. Professional language communicates thoughtfulness, planning, and learning outcomes. Teachers who frame VR programs this way often encounter fewer objections and gain support more quickly. Confidence as a VR educator comes from understanding purpose, not from technical skill. When you know why you're using VR, what students are learning, and how you're guiding them, confidence grows naturally. Many successful VR educators began with no technical background at all. Their strength was pedagogy, knowing how to ask questions, structure experiences, support collaboration, and encourage reflection. These skills, rather than mastery of the technology itself, make programs effective. If you're wondering whether you're ready to explore VR, there are a few signs that you probably are. You understand that VR can be a structured learning environment, that your role is to facilitate rather than compete, that skills matter more than technical knowledge, and that guidance matters more than headset mastery. From there, everything else builds. A simple way to start is by observing students in VR, focusing less on the technology and more on their thinking and interaction. Notice how they communicate, how they solve problems, how they respond to challenges, and how they reflect on outcomes. These observation habits are the first step toward designing meaningful VR learning experiences. This episode has been about laying a foundation. Understanding what VR is, how it differs from other digital tools, what your role looks like as an educator, the skills students can develop, and how intentional design makes VR effective. With this foundation, you're moving from curiosity to confidence. You're not just experimenting with technology, you're preparing to integrate an immersive learning medium thoughtfully into your teaching practice. In our next episode, we'll explore the educational impact of virtual reality, looking closely at how immersive experiences influence understanding, retention, engagement, and skill development, and what that means for teaching and learning in real classrooms. Until then, keep observing, keep reflecting, and keep thinking like an innovative teacher. Thanks for listening.